Mandy and welcome to my mid-month September wrap-up. Already this month I've read 10 books, and while that sounds like a lot, to be fair, 2 of them were more of novellas. The first book that I read was Fairest by Marissa Meyer. Last month I read through all of the Lunar Chronicles, and this month I decided to tackle the novellas and short stories. This book follows Levana, who is the villain throughout the Lunar Chronicles, and we get her backstory. We find out why she is the way she is and what led to her becoming who she is in the books. So this is my doggie. Her name is Sammy, and she's a pointer mix. She's adorable and sweet. She's got stinky breath though. Here's Sammy. Isn't she so cute? I give this book 4 stars, more for the writing style than for the actual character, because Levana is messed up. She has some serious issues. But it was really interesting to get her background and to see in her perspective why she was doing everything, even if that perspective was way messed up. The next book that I read was Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James. This book is a few years old, and a few years ago I saw the miniseries that BBC made from it, and I don't really remember much about the miniseries, but I remember that I didn't hate it, so I figured I would check out the book. This book was my pick for a book out of my comfort zone this month. It is a murder mystery sequel to Pride and Prejudice. It follows Lizzie Bennet several years after her marriage. Every year they hold this big ball. It's a big tradition. Darcy's mother started it. The night before this ball, Lydia, Elizabeth's sister, comes tearing into Pemberley saying that someone has killed Wickham, her husband. So they go out, try to find him, and what had happened was Wickham and Denny left the carriage and they heard gunshots, so they took off running. Sammy, hi. Down. Sammy, down. Well, it turns out Wickham is not dead, but his best friend Denny is, and Wickham is the only suspect. So it turns into, like I said, a murder mystery and the trial and everything that follows with that. I gave this book 2 stars. I really enjoyed the beginning. The first bit was a little introduction that gave a summary of the plot of Pride and Prejudice through the point of view of outsiders, where they thought that Lizzie had come up with this whole huge plot to get Mr. Darcy, and it had finally worked, and it was really entertaining and fun. And after that, it just really went downhill. The beginning was interesting, and I thought that it was going to be a murder mystery, but it didn't really end up that way. And when it came down to it, it dragged on way too long. Especially, it dragged on way too long after the murder was solved. It was like, the whole point of this book is done. It's over. Why are we still reading? I had high hopes for this sequel to Pride and Prejudice, and high hopes were dashed, unfortunately. The next book that I read was a bit more of a success. I read Carrie Ball by Stephanie Garber. I've been seeing this book everywhere on, well really, I've been seeing it a lot on Bookstagram. Not as much on BookTube, but I read it this month because it sounded interesting. It's about a girl named Scarlett who, her whole life, she wants to participate in Caraval, which is this big game event that happens put on by a master legend. His name is Legend. And she writes him every year begging him to come to her hometown. And finally, the year she gives up, the year that her father has arranged a marriage for her, he finally extends an invitation. Well, she doesn't want to go. She says, I don't want to anger our father. But her sister says, no, let's go, and actually kidnaps her and drags her along to participate in Caraval. Well, they get there, and her sister disappears, and it turns out that the game this year is to find her sister. Everyone is trying to find her sister Tella. So it progresses from there. She meets a guy named Julian. Well, they met before she got to the island for the game, but he plays a bigger role. He helps her out, and that's all I'll say. I really enjoyed this book. I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really solid. The plot was interesting. The characters were fun. They had redeeming qualities, which this month I've read a couple books with non-redeemable qualities in their characters, and I'm just like, what the heck? But I fully enjoyed this. I definitely recommend it if this sounds like your sort of thing. The next book that I read was another disappointment, and I read My Life with the Walter Boys by Ali Novak. I had seen this book a couple months ago at my library, and when I saw this thing on the title by Wattpad Sensation, I thought, oh, I don't want to read that. And I didn't check it out. And the next time I spotted it and I thought it looked interesting, and then once again I saw that Wattpad, and then the third time at the library it stood out to me and I finally got it. I wish I hadn't. The reason why I picked up this book is because it looks like a Casey West book, and I'm sure that's what they were going for. I mean, they've got that kind of vibe, that whimsical text for the title. So after, for the third time it stood out for me, I figured I just needed to pick it up because it was continuously standing out to me. You have a girl named Jackie who recently lost her whole family. She's sent to live with her mother's best friend growing up, who she has never met. Turns out this mother's best friend has 12 boys. So instead of mourning over her dead family, she is pining over boys and getting annoyed over the silly things they do. Almost immediately, she singles out one of the brothers. Turns out this brother is a player, so when another brother shows interest on her, she accepts that interest even though she's not actually interested. I don't know, I thought that she was not redeemable, her love interest was not redeemable. They made a lot of stupid decisions throughout this book. And the only reason I gave it 2 stars is because I kept reading until the end. It was semi-compelling, but not enough. This really felt like a teenage girl's fantasy of what she thinks she wants in a relationship, only to find out when she's in her 20s that it is unhealthy and stupid. I do not recommend this one. Don't pick it up. The next book that I read was The Romanov Sisters by Helen Rappaport. This was a nonfiction book, and it was my nonfiction pick of the month. It was basically a story about the Romanovs, the last family, you know, Anastasia and all of that. We started with a brief overview of their mother, Alexandra's life, and her courtship with Nicholas, and then it just starts going from there up until the time of their deaths. I have read a couple of nonfiction books in the past couple of months that were confusing and didn't have good flow, and I'm happy to report this book was not like that. It had really nice flow. I didn't get confused with where we were jumping all over the place, and ultimately I give this 4 stars. It was a really interesting history, and it was a nice overview of their life. I feel like it gave me a very good picture of what things were like for them. The only thing I'd say about this book is that it's called The Romanov Sisters, but really it covered their entire family. I didn't feel like we got any more or less of the sisters versus the parents versus their brother. So I don't know if the title really fits, but that doesn't change the fact that it was a good nonfiction book. It's actually a little surprising that I chose to read that book because I found out about it when reading Romanov, a book that I read last month and did not like. And in the author's note at the back, she mentioned that that was one of the books that she had read for reference. And I decided that I would check it out, and I'm glad that I did. The next book that I read is another one beloved on BookTube, and I can tell you that I loved it just as much as everybody else. That is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I've been dragging my feet on this book just a little bit because it's such a serious topic. For those who haven't heard of this book, it is about a girl who witnesses one of her best friends being killed by a police officer in what should have been a routine pullover. She is black, her friend was black, and she believes that it happened because they were black. And because this was such an intense topic, like I said, I shied away from it, but I finally decided to pick this up, and I'm so glad that I did. I gave this book 5 stars, which is ironic because the main character's name is Star. I thought that this story was so well told, it was so beautiful, and it really helped me to gain a perspective of what life is like for black people and for minorities. I feel like before this, I didn't really know much about the struggles that they go through, and this really helped me. I loved it so much. It is a difficult read, it is a difficult topic, but I can tell you that the difficulty is well worth it. The next book that I read was Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is a collection of short stories based on all of the characters from the Lunar Chronicles, and I thought it was a really solid view of all the stories. One of the most creative stories in there actually didn't have to do with the characters, but it was set in the world, and it was called The Little Android, and it was based on The Little Mermaid, where an android has some malfunctioning in her programming, and she falls in love with a human, and she puts herself in an escort droid body and tries to win his heart. It was really cute, it was really creative. Most of these stories were prequels of sort. We just saw a small glimpse of the lives of each of the characters before the start of the books, but the last story in this collection was actually a little sequel, and I thought it was so cute, it was wonderful. I don't want to spoil anything, but I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a really solid story collection, and it was a nice view into all of the characters. The next book that I read was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by J.K. Rowling. I listened to the audiobook of this one, and the audiobook is really good. If you have a chance, I highly recommend it. It's narrated by the actor who plays Newt in the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movies. I gave it 5 stars. They gave some really interesting history in the wizarding world, which is something that I really like to read, and Harry Potter is one of my favorites anyway. So if you like Harry Potter, I definitely recommend checking this out. It has been updated from the original version. Now, a lot of people, that I've seen on BookTube at least, when they read a book in a series, they are content to wait a few weeks or months before they read the next book. I am not one of those people. Once I find a series that I like, I have to pick up the next one pretty soon after the last one. It's just how I am. I get so excited about a series and I want to keep going. And that's how I was with this series. The next book that I read was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is the sequel to Carrie Ball. It follows Scarlet's sister this time, so we get a different point of view in the same world, and we still get to see the same characters. I can't tell you much about the plot without spoiling it, but I will say that I thought this was a very solid sequel. I gave this one 4.5 stars as well, just like the first book. I really like Stephanie Garber's writing, and I enjoyed the world. It was unique and different than things that I've read recently. I mean, there are probably other books out there like it, but I just haven't read them. And with that being said, the next book that I read was Finale by Stephanie Garber. This is actually the last book I'll be talking about. This is the 3rd book in the Carrie Ball series, and it was good. I thought it was a really solid ending to this series. I gave it 4 stars. If you have read the first book, I recommend sticking through to the last book. I will say that the ending, some parts about the ending, without giving spoilers, seem to happen a little out of nowhere, but maybe that's because we didn't have certain characters' points of view. I don't know, but overall, good choice, good book, solid series. Now for once, I actually gave you a mid-month wrap-up. How crazy is this, guys? I know that my last few videos have been wrap-ups as I'm trying to catch you guys all up with the reading that I've been doing because I've kind of fallen away from BookTube. So I apologize for all of these wrap-ups. Hopefully you enjoy hearing about what I've read. I'll try to come out with some more fun videos in the coming weeks. It's just been, I don't know, I've been struggling a little with my desire to make videos and to watch them. And yeah, I'm sure that you guys have all been there. But I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, if you like what you saw, feel free to click subscribe. You can also follow me on my social media, which I will link down below. I hope you're having a great bookish day, and I will see you next time.